Today's gospel is a very powerful one that we all need to hear and understand, because the lesson from today can have eternal consequences. This weekend, the theme that stands out is that of the sin of omission, a sin of omission, meaning failing to act when we have a moral obligation to do so. Often when we think of sins, we focus on the sins of commission, the things that we have committed, the things that we have done. So some examples include lying, stealing, swearing, hurting someone else. You get the point. In cases like these, we have done something wrong. It's easy to see this, but it's not so easy to see with a sin of omission, the times that we have failed to act. These sins are not as tangible. They're not memorable because we didn't do anything. That's the whole problem. We didn't do anything when we should have. Sins of omission are when we should have acted. We had a moral obligation to act, but we did not. We chose not to. In today's gospel reading, we see this play out, this sin of omission play out in the rich man's situation. He could have helped his brother Lazarus, but he did nothing to help him. Each and every day, Lazarus sat outside of his gates, outside of his home, hoping that the rich man would do something to help him. The rich man did not. He omitted to act. He did not act. Why? Because it was inconvenient to him. This poor man Lazarus sitting outside of his home was inconvenient. Helping Lazarus would interrupt his comfortable and busy lifestyle. Sometimes sins of omission happen because we can be greedy, we can be lazy, or just plain old selfish. We could be lazy because we don't want to make the effort. We don't want to make the effort or take the time necessary to help a person in need. We can be lazy. That's how we omit to act. We fail to act. We can be greedy. Greed can lead to a sin of omission because we don't want to share our wealth. We don't want to share our time. We don't want to share our resources with another person clearly in need. We can tell ourselves, we can rationalize it within ourselves, and we could say, well, someone else will help them. Or, I don't have any money to give. Money's tight right now. I've got payments to make. I've got car payments. I've got mortgage payments. I've got student loans I'm still paying off and credit cards. I don't have money to give to this person. Meanwhile, the person in need right in front of us, a person in need in this world, is naked, is starving, and will never have a car, will never have a home, and may never go to college or university in their lifetime. This selfish excuse for not acting when morally obligated to do so can be something like this. Well, I don't have the time to help other people. I'm busy. I've got a lot on my plate right now. Leave me alone. Don't interrupt me. Don't disrupt my comfortable lifestyle. That's what we think, what we feel, what we even say to ourselves in our heads when faced with someone in need. What about when we say to ourselves things like, I've worked hard for my money. It's mine. Let them go get a job like everyone else does. This way of thinking is very judgmental, and it assumes that everyone in the world is as blessed, as fortunate, and given the same opportunities in life that we have been given. The same education, the same job availability in the same time, the same connections. These are false assumptions and not fair to make. Sins of omission happen all the time. It's very common in our society, especially in a wealthy and resource-rich country like Canada or the United States, sins of omission are rampant. It's easy to see how wealthy societies produce people who value things like comfort, leisure, and luxury above the needs of the poor. In fact, the needs of the poor sometimes never cross our mind. We're too focused on comfort, leisure, and the luxuries that we expect in each day of our lives. The poor people, the poor in our world, become this inconvenience to us. They're inconvenient. They're inconvenient in their needs. They're inconvenient when they pass us on the street or we pass them and they beg for money. They're inconvenient when a church or an organization asks us for support. It's inconvenient. Helping them becomes an interruption in our comfortable, busy lives. An interruption. Even mentioning the poor can move some wealthy people to get angry. They blame the victims. They blame the poor people for maybe their bad choices in life, their bad choices, their lack of education or effort. Well, if he just went to university, if he went to college like I did, or put his mind to his education, he'd do better. Somehow their poor choices have caused their situation in life. This is what we tell ourselves. My friends, this is unfair to say. These people need our mercy. They need our compassion, and they need our charity. These people need our mercy, our compassion, and our charity. Because that's what God the Father offers to you and I. Every time we become spiritually poor as a sinner, every time that we sin, we become spiritually poor. And we beg God for His mercy, His compassion, and for His charity towards us. His forgiveness to us, His love to us, His help to us. Yet we can all fall into sins of omission without even knowing it. And we may think that we're all good people. We haven't committed any significant sins by our actions. Well, I haven't robbed a bank this week. I haven't killed anyone this month. We think, well, I haven't done any of the major sins. I'm a good person. You're a good person. We're all great people. We haven't fallen into sins of commission that we have done. But we may have committed many sins of omission by failing to act. Today's message in the gospel comes straight from Jesus' lips, straight from His mouth. It sends shivers down my spine just listening to it, wondering if you and I, as a nation, as a community, individually, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough to help the poor in our world? Am I doing enough to help the poor in our world? We see two complete polar opposites in the gospel. The rich man on one side, and the poor man Lazarus on the other. One is well dressed, wearing fine clothes, relaxing comfortably in his home with all the creature comforts to go with it. The other is on the street, not covered in fine clothing, but rather covered in sores all over his body. He is naked and covered in sores all over his body. One feasts and eats well regularly, while the other is starving, hoping for scraps. This scene is certainly familiar to us in our world, even 2,000 years after this message was given by Christ. As North Americans, we spend time shopping for nice clothes, hours at times in malls shopping for nice clothes, and all other sorts of creature comforts often in the form of electronics and the latest technological creations put out by Apple or other companies. I'm not endorsing Apple, I'm just mentioning it because we know about iPads and iPhones and everything. You and I eat well. We rarely miss meals when it comes week to week. Meanwhile, there's millions of people. There's millions of people. Did you hear what I said? There's millions of people in our world who are naked. Shopping doesn't even cross their minds. It's not even in their comprehensive view of the world. Millions of people who are naked, who are hungry, and who have no access to clean drinking water. Millions of people who have no access to clean drinking water. This is shocking when we stop and think that you and I can go to dozens or hundreds, I don't know, hundreds probably, restaurants, stores, thousands of homes all around us within walking distance of where we're sitting right now, of homes with clean drinking water. Yet millions upon millions of people have nowhere to find clean drinking water. A basic, essential need is nowhere to be found. Nor will these people, these millions of people, ever have enough money in their lifetime. They'll never have enough money in their lifetime. Are you listening? They'll never have enough money in their lifetime to buy an iPad or an iPhone or anything like that. They'll never in their lifetime. It's not a broken record. It's reality that we are omitting and failing to act on to help the poor in our world. Today's gospel inevitably leads us to ask ourselves, both as a nation and personally, am I doing enough to help the poor in the world? Am I doing enough to help the poor in the world? Ask yourself, I'm asking myself, am I doing enough to help the poor in our world? Given my resources, given my time, my talent, whatever I have to give, am I doing enough to help the poor in our world? Ask yourself this question. This year, in 2016, this year, the World Economic Forum and Oxfam have both released data showing how 80 of the richest people on earth, 80 people, I'm talking about a fraction of us gathered here today, 80 people in our world held more than half the planet's wealth and resources. Whoa! 80 people in the planet hold half of the world's wealth and resources. There's something wrong here. That's half the planet of about 7 billion people, and 80 hold half the wealth and resources. Now, you and I may not be one of the 80 super uber rich people on this planet, but like I said earlier, you and I rarely go without the basic necessities in life living here in Canada. Therefore, by default, we fall into the category of the rich man and rich woman. So you and I have a responsibility to share our wealth, to share whatever we have with the less fortunate, who are grasping, begging, praying, hoping for the bare necessities in life. If you and I, if we ignore this responsibility, if we ignore the poor, put it out of our mind, just enjoy my comfortable way of life, my leisure. If we fail to act in some way, you and I are participating and continuing, propagating this injustice in our planet, in our world. You and I, we are called to volunteer our time. We are called to be generous with our talents, our gifts, our abilities, our skills. You and I are called to give from the resources that we do have at our disposal. In today's parable, Jesus reminds us that death is the great equalizer. Death is the great equalizer. After our time on this earth, you and I will be held accountable for the good that we did. But we'll also be held accountable for the good that we ignored doing, the good that we ignored and failed to do. We hear how the poor man Lazarus receives the reward of heaven. We hear how he's carried by the angels. What a beautiful image. He's carried by the angels to heaven. He's comforted for all eternity to be with Abraham and probably the saints. What a beautiful equalizer that death was for Lazarus, this poor man. Meanwhile, it's scary to hear. It's scary to hear. Meanwhile, the rich man who failed to act, he spends eternity in hell, being tormented by demons. He's alone, and he's in agony. We hear about the agony of the flames. This stark contrast of life after death tells us, teaches us, that our decisions matter. What you and I do matter. What you and I choose to ignore to do matters. And that you and I, we have a responsibility to do our part, to each do our part in caring for the poor in our world. My friends, loving your neighbor doesn't mean just being a nice person. Loving your neighbor does not mean to just be a nice person and to avoid the big sins. Loving your neighbor means taking action. When you see someone in need, when you hear of someone in need, we take action. That's what loving your neighbor means. The blessings that we have, that we receive in this life, they're not ours to keep. They're not ours to hoard. They're not ours to stockpile. These blessings we have been given in our life, they are meant to be shared. They are meant to be multiplied by our generosity and care for those less fortunate. May you and I, may we listen to this powerful warning that Jesus gives us today, so that tomorrow we may spend eternity together in heaven. May God bless you.